Hi there, I'm Mick. I'm an intern with Oxplore, and today we're exploring the big question of, is the internet bad? I study law at Balliol College, and I'm also the president of the University LGBTQ Society. And today I have here with me Tebello from the Blavatnik School of Government. Tebello, would you mind telling us who you are and what you do at the university?
Yes, so I'm Tebello Qhotsokoane, and I'm a Research and Policy Officer at the Pathways for Prosperity Commission on Technology and Inclusive Development. And the Commission is largely charged with advising developing countries on how they could take advantage of frontier technologies for inclusive development. As a response to the popular narrative that, with the rise of robots and artificial intelligence, there's going to be a rise in precarious work, and also just a closure of certain development pathways for poorer countries that rely on export-led manufacturing.
And would you mind, sharing with us a brief kind of definition of frontier technologies that you mentioned?
Yes. So essentially, how we're defining frontier technologies are technologies that have emerged in the last decade or so.
Okay.
So we think about advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning, in more autonomous robots, so self-driving cars, for instance, would be in that. But also, interestingly, in developing country contexts, the mobile phone could be considered a frontier technology, because if you think about how people used to communicate before, it was mostly landline communications, but now you have handheld devices that people carry around and are able to use not just to communicate, but to transact as well. Mobile money, for instance, is quite big in Kenya, which is essentially a platform where you can send the same way you can sort of send money over your mobile phone by using mobile phone credit, and then you can trade that in for actual currency. And so those are examples of how we define. That's how we define frontier technologies, essentially.
Would you say that there are any kind of hopes and fears that you have more generally about the internet?
I think that there's a lot of hope in the internet. I have friends in Lesotho, for instance, who are excited about the prospect of using Amazon Mechanical Turk to do little freelance work, because unemployment rates are so high, and so the ability to move away from that particular labour market to work for a company in the Silicon Valley or in London on discrete tasks is a great one. So I think people are really excited about the prospects that the internet can bring, and I think that I share in that excitement. But I think that there's also frustrations around the questions of power, I think, which we do not really talk a lot when we think about the internet as this democratic force. It's it's a democratizing force. Well, it is, but there are also sort of huge power asymmetries. Mm-hmm. Essentially, we think of jobs that people have as being secure. So, for instance, my job at the university is considered a relatively secure job. I'm on a fixed contract with the university, so I know that I will be in that job for a certain amount of time. Mm. Whereas there are certain people that work, for instance, Deliveroo, people that deliver things on Deliveroo, would be considered in slightly less secure work, because the work is seasonal, because you're also sort of contracted by Deliveroo as a platform to work for them, and may not actually have access to things that I have as a salaried employee, like health insurance and pension schemes, so things like that. And so those are considered slightly more precarious roles to be in.
For the young people watching this who are maybe interested in what you do and what you've been talking about, do you have any general advice for them when it comes to pursuing interest in life or going to university?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the going to university question, I think, definitely go. Because it's an experience that exposes you to so many different worldviews, and I think that pushes you constantly as an individual. And I think in terms of what one does, I think there's, again, constantly asking the why questions and really engaging with the big issues of the day, I think, is an extremely important thing. And not just sort of be a passive consumer of information, but how do you actively engage with information that is publicly available? How do you actively engage with debates that are happening currently, whether it's debates around GDPR, whether it's debates around the rising the rising nationalistic sentiment globally? Like, what do you as an individual think about those issues? What impact do you see those large sort of geopolitical conversations having on your own life, and how can you start sort of engaging in those conversations instead of being a sort of passive onlooker? So I think that that's an extremely important thing that is transferable to policy work, which is what I'm doing, and also engineering and sort of humanities work. If you're interested in becoming a writer, a poet, I think that there's sort of active engagement with what is stimulating you around, which is important.
And yes, that's a very good note to end our interview, I think. So thank you for being with us today, and Oxford is very happy to have you here.
No, thank you so much.